Hey, everybody. Welcome to Call Camp. Today, the subject is making the best of what you've got. And John, I got to tell you, when I first saw that title, I didn't know what the hell you're talking about here. What does that mean?
Yeah, good question, Steve. So really the point of today's topic and what we're talking about is leveraging the contacts that you do have and the people that you are able to get on the phone to make the most of those opportunities so you're not wasting calls, right? As it's getting harder and harder to get decision makers on the phone, what can you do as a seller to make sure that you're making the best use of that time and not just having wasted dials?
Awesome. Well, I tell you what, I don't know if it was accidental or not, but clearly the topic resonated because we have over 600 folks registered today. So well done. Maybe curiosity is what drove folks to sign up, and it's a great lesson, everyone. I'm very excited for it. You already heard John Healy. He's VP of Sales for Factor 8. John has earned a ton of respect in the sales community and the inside sales community, working with companies like Infor, Staples, New Order, and many others. And people just rave about him. Every time I meet anybody who knows him, I always say, all right, come on, but cut the BS. What do you really think of John? No, he's really good. He's amazing. So very happy to have him here. John, anything to say?
No, you gave me a much better introduction than I would have given myself, so thank you.
You got it. And we also have on the phone Kelly and Jesse from Infor. Now, Jesse is one of the BDRs, business development reps. Really appreciate you joining us here, Jesse. How does it feel to have your calls going to be coached in front of hundreds of people?
Well, I'm excited, Steve, and it's all for the greater good. So thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. And who says that Canada and U.S. can't get along, huh? And Kelly is sales effectiveness and success within Infor. Kelly, just speak for a little bit about your role in your organization, please.
Sure. So I'm the manager of success and effectiveness at Infor. Our team supports the ongoing development of global insights.
I think
sales and business development under our VP. What was that?
Kelly, sorry, I think we lost your audio there for a second, but everything was going fine. That's just the way these things are. But say that one more time.
Yeah, sure. So I'm, again, Success and Effectiveness Manager at Infor. So our team supports the ongoing development of global inside sales and business development. And under our VP, Katie Azuma, and our director, Lior Fishman, we manage about 250 people globally.
Wow. Okay. So that whole organization is about 250. So there are definitely a lot of best practices to be surfaced and shared whenever you're dealing with an organization of about 250. So that's great. So everyone, as always, please, questions or comments, tweet us, #CallCamp. Additionally, you can also type in, if you're not into Twitter, you can type comments or questions and do so as we go. We're gonna have questions going as we go. I'm gonna refer to actually our marketer Jesse is sitting here next to me, but I'm gonna refer to him as marketing guy for purposes of this because we have another Jesse on. So please tweet us at CallCamp or type into the box. So our focus for the call, we talked about making the most of what we've got. John, take it away. Why even bother with this?
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously you can see a few different topics here, or a few different ideas of why this is such an important topic. And really this applies whether you're in a business development role or an account management role. And for me, really the last bullet point on there is probably the most important one, which is it gives you a chance to get these small wins on every single call that you have, right? There's always an opportunity to get something. Sales is obviously a rejection sport, and it's hard to keep that confidence rolling. And when you have these skills and you're able to continue to gain new information about your accounts, new contacts within your accounts, and expand your relationships throughout those accounts, it gives you that confidence to continue to make those dials, which is fantastic. Obviously, being able to get deeper and wider into those accounts, and I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you're keeping up on the industry, consensus buying and the number of people involved in buying decisions continues to grow. It's just a little over 6 the last time I saw, as far as business-to-business purchasing decision goes. If you're in an account management role, another big part is protecting that existing business. No matter how good your relationship is, You can run into what I call the bus lotto syndrome, right? Either your contact gets hit by a bus or they win the lotto, and all of a sudden tomorrow they're not there anymore. How steady, how stable is that account? How likely are you to retain that business if your key point of contact goes away, regardless of how strong your relationship is? So it's really an incentive for anyone in an inside sales that they're continually going back to find those additional contacts, because it's a nonstop effort. There's always new people coming in, people going out of an organization, and you need to make sure that you have the complete view so that you can provide a more effective solution to the folks that you're talking to.
And John, I'll tell you what, in terms of reporting, one of the things we do over here at ExecVision, and we actually see just a perfect correlation with our performance of our team and our revenue numbers, is we track contacts added to, in our case, in our CRM, and we're tracking those religiously. It's a simple report that you can have, and you can see whether or not the direct line was added, for example, if the person's title was entered correctly, all that kind of information, which seems like a small thing, but man, does it make a big difference.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll actually see that a little bit in some of the calls that we're going to go through later on, right? Just how much time you can gain back in your day, how much more effective you can be if you're doing this effectively right from the get-go. So obviously there's a benefit to the seller and the organization as far as getting these additional contacts, but the flip side is it's better for the customer as well, right? If you have a more robust contact list within your account, it helps the customer ensure they get a better solution, right? They're going to get a wider scope of that project to be able to pull other departments in, a bigger impact, more stakeholders, which makes it easier to secure budget because you can pull from different sources, right? And it becomes more of a company solution instead of a line of business solution. The other thing it does, if you've done this effectively and really taken the time to map out that organization, is you're not wasting your contact's time, right? If you understand the flow of how things work through the organization because you've mapped out all of these contacts and made connections with all of these folks, you don't have to continue to pound the same contact over and over again for updates, wondering if the PO is getting approved. When is it going to get cut? When are we going to hear back from the demo, right? The more people you get involved in the process, the less time you're going to waste from those key contacts. You don't want to be continuing to reach out to the VP of IT, for example, trying to get updates on when a PO is going to get cut. That's a waste of their time, and it makes you less effective as a seller.
Amen to that. I'll tell you, when I first started in my sales career, I was failing. I've told the story on Call Camp before, and then when I dug into my territory, I found that most of the low performers and average performers just called the same contacts over and over again, versus the top performers found new contacts. Fresh blood made all the difference because you don't understand the politics of the organization. So when I did that, I ended up being the #1 out of 100 at the time at CEB when I came in, and I was in the bottom 10% initially. So this is just something I believe so strongly, and I don't care where you are in your sales career, you have to always be finding new contacts. John, back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're going to talk about here is really these 3 key areas where you can capture these additional contacts from, and where you can go to look for these additional contacts, right? And this is a lot of the blocking and tackling work that a lot of reps are not taking the time to do. And as Steve, as you pointed out, it's really what separates the high performing sales folks from average and low performing folks, is the people who are doing the extra work. And so the 3 types of people, or 3 types of calls you're generally going to get before you get to that decision maker, is you're going to go through the phone tree, you're going to hit an operator or a front desk type person, or you get to an assistant, admin, some other live body who's not the person you were looking for, or not the decision maker that you were after. So Steve, if you can advance, we'll go through each of these in a little bit more detail. So when you get to the assistant, the executive admin, whatever their title is, or you get to another live body in the organization who is not your decision maker or not the contact that you set out to go get, your goal in that conversation is to gather as much information as you possibly can, right? Everybody in the organization knows something, regardless of who you're talking to. And so this is your fact-finding opportunity, and your goal is to, again, arm yourself with as much information as you can about the account and about that decision maker, so that when you do get him or her on the phone, you can have a more valuable conversation, right? You don't want to do a lot of your discovery work and qualifying work when you've got the VP of fill in the blank on the phone, right? Their time is too valuable. You want to be respectful of that. And the better you arm yourself with this information, the more effective that conversation is going to go. So when it comes to tips for how you can leverage these folks in order to get some of that information, first and foremost, one of the things that I definitely recommend for reps is asking for help, right? If you use the words, "Can you help me?" people will be more inclined to help you. It's just a natural human instinct to help someone when they specifically ask for help. The other thing that you can do is you can act lost, right? So if I end up in the sales department when I'm trying to contact the VP of IT, "Hey, listen, I apologize, Steve. I have no idea how I ended up in sales. I was actually trying to get a hold of Mark Johnson over in IT. Is he somebody you're familiar with? Is he still the VP of IT?" Right? And see if I can get some information from those folks that way, or find some additional contacts that way. One little last nugget I'll give you on this one is my favorite people to reach out to or accidentally end up at are salespeople, because somebody always answers when you try and get a hold of sales. It's usually somebody who will talk. And most importantly, it's somebody who doesn't know what they're not supposed to tell you, right? So when you get in front of that sales team, they may give you a lot more information than that executive admin might get, because they're trained on what not to say and who not to let through. Whereas when you get in other parts of the organization, they don't have that same level of knowledge, and they'll probably end up divulging information that maybe the assistant or the admin might not be willing to give up.
Gotta love the sales karma. Also, if you give some info, someone calls you, guess what? You're going to get some from somebody else. I was doing some of that on a trade show floor yesterday. In fact, going up to the different tables and asking for intelligence on who they've spoken with, and we swap that intelligence. That's sales.
Yep, salespeople will generally help other salespeople. So when you get to an operator, right, there's a little bit of a different approach, because here our goal is to get to a live body, right? To get to somebody who's going to talk to us. That person at the front desk, the operator, the switchboard, generally not going to be able to give us a whole lot of information. But when you are working with these folks, generally we're going to start with specific titles, right? Somebody that we have loaded up in our CRM, they're the VP of IT, they're director of IT, head of purchasing, something along those lines. And that's generally where most sales folks are going to start, is by asking for that particular title. If you're talking to someone who doesn't have the knowledge of that organization, or if it doesn't show up just like that in their system, they're not going to know how to help you. You want to be able to take it down a level, or maybe even 2 levels, to make sure you get to the right area, right? So if I say, generally speaking, I work with the head of purchase or the VP of IT, I might say, "Hey, can you direct me to your VP of IT?" And they say, "No, don't show anybody with that title. Do you know who else that might be?" Okay, well, do you guys have an IT department, right? And maybe I can get into the functional area. If I'm still not getting any help that way, I pull it back even further into kind of a layperson approach, where I would just say, "Okay, well, listen, if something were to happen to your computer went down, who would you call, right? Or who do you reach out to when your system fails, right? And your computer's not working or you can't connect. Just get me to somebody, any live body who can start then opening up the inside of that organization to me." That's all I'm trying to accomplish when I get myself through to the operator.
That's excellent. Hey, and everyone, remember, if you have questions or comments, tweet them, #callcamp, or type them into that comments box here, and marketing guy will let us know. Keep going there, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you keep calling Jesse marketing guy. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's like another way.
So the last area you might end up in, right, and a lot of organizations have gone this direction, is into the phone tree, right? A person doesn't even pick up the phone. It's dial 1 for sales, dial 2 for customer support, dial 3 for purchasing, something along those lines. When you're going through these phone trees, though, there's still ways that you can gather additional information and things that you can do that are going to be helpful for you. So one is, listen for the different departments. How are they setting up their phone tree, right? If I'm calling an organization and it says, if you want to speak to Mary, press 1 and Steve, press 2, I've got a pretty good idea of the size of that organization, versus if they say for purchasing, press 1, IT, press 2, customer service, press 3, it gives me a little bit different idea of how large of an organization I'm probably dealing with, right? So there's different ways that you can do that. The other thing that you can try as you're going through phone trees is, and again, I think we'll talk about this a little later on one of the calls, is try common names. If you're not sure who you're supposed to end up at, or you're not sure of what the direct extension is for your contact, start trying common names that are in there in larger organizations. Smith, Jones, type fewer letters into the system and see how many results it returns. right? Those are all different ways that you can use to find additional contacts, to find additional people in these departments. And you also want to look for the patterns within the companies that you're calling out to, right? So if you know that your contact's extension is 105 and you're not able to get through and they never pick up the phone and you're constantly leaving voicemails, okay, well, let's try 106. Let's try 104. Let's continue to move our way through that phone tree. Try going up and down and just see where it takes me, because the goal in this is to get to a live body and somebody who's going to be able to help me gather additional information about the account and about the people that I'm trying to connect with.
Hey, John, I'll throw in one more little tip there. IT help desk. So if you're someone selling something where you'd like to know what the existing systems of the prospect company are, go to the main switchboard and just simply say IT help desk, have them transfer you to the IT help desk if they're big enough. When you get in there, they usually have a voice prompt that says, you know, for this system, press 1, for Infor, press 2, for something, press 3. And they go through all the different options of the different underlying technologies. They have people like Discover.org, which has since acquired RainKing. That's what they did, is they would train their researchers to go and listen to those prompts. So it's a great little simple tip. Marketing guys got something here. What do you got?
Yeah, guys, we got a question from Casey Jensen. So, John, what do you do when they ask why or who you are?
Yeah, really good question. And I guess, and I don't know that we have a whole lot of context on the person that we're talking to when they ask that question, right? Because it may change my answer a little bit depending on if I'm talking to their assistant or if I'm talking to someone else, just a random live body in the organization, or maybe an operator, right? If I'm talking to that executive admin or somebody whose job is to kind of protect that very important person, and I start asking for them or asking to speak to them, and they say, okay, well, what is this in regards to? I'm very direct and very upfront in what my reason for calling is, right? So, you know, hey, listen, you guys are an existing customer with Infor, and we're reaching out to all, you know, to our existing clients because there's a new product that we've launched, or an X or a Y or a Z, if that's an existing client. And then I come back and circle right back to my question, right? I think where a lot of folks are going to run, or where a lot of folks run into trouble, is they get put on the defensive when they start getting questions asked, and they spend way too much time talking and try to explain and try to qualify the reason for why they're making that call. Just give a very simple explanation. That may be a good time to drop your value prop or your value pitch in there real quick, and then circle back and ask the question again, right? And continue to go back, because you don't want to lose control of that conversation right there and turn it into a, now they're interrogating me and I'm on the defensive and providing responses.
Hey,
Steve,
John,
what feedback would you give?
I was going to say, yeah, let me jump in with the science here. There's some really interesting research and science, and that's from a book called Influence, which everyone should read. It's something that actually, you know, a friendly competitor called a guy named John Barrows talks about quite a bit. Read the book Influence. It's excellent, excellent, excellent. In the book Influence, they talk about this psychology experiment that they ran, where people went up to someone using a photocopy machine if there was a line, and they would go to the person at the photocopy and say, can I use the photocopy machine? And it was some percentage of people would say, yes, sure, go ahead, you can go in front of me. And some people would say no. But then the next experiment in the B group, they said, can I use the photocopy machine because I'm in a hurry? And those people, a higher percentage said yes. Then in the third group, they said, can I use the photocopy machine because I need to make copies? This is where it gets interesting. Because I need to make copies, it's like circular logic. It makes no sense. But the same, like 94% of people said yes to that. So the whole reason I bring this up is, if it doesn't really matter what you say, as long as you say the word because. That's what the psychology tells us. People don't even hear what happens after the word because. You could say, because I need to talk to them about their ERP. If you're in for, I need to talk to them about their purchasing system or their supplier management system or whatever. Just say the word because in the topic. Don't talk yourself out of it.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good feedback.
All right, so we have one more question from Calvin Adams. So he has a client who he's trying to call. He's gotten through several times to, it looks like he's gotten through, but he's never actually gotten past the operator, and all he gets is not much information. What do you suggest that he does?
You can't get past the operator. What else should he do? Give him, I mean, there's 1,000 things he could do. John, some ideas.
Yeah, I'd give him, again, the one thing I would recommend too, the only person he's getting to is the operator. You've left a couple of voicemails. Most phone systems, when you get to the end of a voicemail, you can hit 0 and it'll take you right back out to the operator. One thing I'm a huge proponent of is you go back out to the operator and you thank them for putting you through, right? And you say, hey, this is John again from Factor 8. Thank you so much for putting me through to Steve's voicemail. Left him a message. Hey, real quick, do you know, is he even in the office today? Yeah. Are there days of the week he's generally more available? What time does he typically get into the office, right? Just coming back to thank the person who answers 400 calls a day and never once hears thank you will set you apart. And then they're going to be more inclined to want to help you, especially if you do it 2 or 3 times. Now they're starting to feel bad for you. And they're like, listen, buddy, like, I know you've left a few voicemails. I appreciate that you're persistent. You keep reaching out, but he's never going to call you back because he doesn't talk to vendors. You really need to talk to Marcus because Marcus is his right-hand person. And if you don't go through Marcus, you're never going to get to him. Great. Thank you. That's the information I needed. So that's one direction I might point you.
That's a great one. Another one is Google the person's name with quotation marks around it, and then the area code where they are with quotation marks around it. A lot of times you'll find their cell phone numbers pop up on like their kid's little league or something like that. You'll be shocked at how frequently you find that. I mean, goodness, there's so many. Get transferred to the CEO's office. Frequently they'll have an executive assistant, whereas other people won't. I mean, there's just some, we could play this game all day. Call a random number in the sequence that you talked about before, John, so you can get a random person on the phone, hoping you can help me out. Who's in charge of blank? Who is their right-hand person? There's a lot of different things. Just remember that the game of gathering information by phone is a game. It's a puzzle. It's a maze. When you hit a dead end in the maze, you can either sit down and give up, or you can try going a different way. And you hear there's just a ton of creativity. And I think sometimes we feel as if this job is not creative, when in fact there are thousands of different ways to solve the puzzle. If we just, use your brain and try something new, try something different, try something unconventional, call the IT help desk, like I mentioned before, do something that other people out there that do your job are not doing. So what other challenges do you run into when gathering information? We're gonna just let that question kind of hang out there. Type those into call camp. We're going to revisit those, but for right now, we got to get to the calls because it's 1:23 Eastern time. It's time for calls. So maybe, I don't know how you want to do this. If Kelly, you want to jump in here, or if Jesse, you want to jump in here and sort of set the table for this call. What was going on in this call? John, I'm going to let you take it away from here, okay?
Yeah. I was going to say I can go ahead and cue the call up because obviously Jesse made the call, but this was from a few months back here, so I won't put him on the spot to go back into his archives to remember what the call was. But just to set the table for it, this is an initial outreach trying to get a hold of the decision maker for this product. It's a talent acquisition product, if I remember correctly. That's the initial goal of this call, is to get connected to the decision maker for the first time.
Very good. And one more thing just to put forward is, everyone listening, please, in terms of your comments, Jesse is putting himself out here by putting his recorded call on a webinar in front of hundreds of people. Be nice. I mean, keep your coaching positive and productive. I know everyone's going to have another viewpoint on what he should have done differently, and that's okay. That's cool. Let's keep everything positive and productive, and when we have feedback, we'll make it constructive, because we want to create an environment where people feel safe to learn and do things like this. So big, I mean, really the star of this show is Jesse. Thank you, man, for putting your call out there, okay?
Good morning. Can I speak to Sheila Lay?
I can put you through to her assistant. One moment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Man, it's particularly faint here, and I don't really know why, guys. Hopefully it'll be a little louder here.
This is Janine.
Good morning, Janine. This is Jeff Inman from Import Talent Science. I'm trying to reach Sheila Lay.
Sheila's at a meeting. Could I give you her voicemail, or would you like to leave a message?
Well, I can get her voicemail. Is there a better time to call her back?
You never know, because she is really and truly in meetings constantly. And she may have a 15-minute window in between two meetings. I mean, she literally just goes from meeting to meeting. So
I totally understand.
Yeah.
I'm giving her a call from the predictive analytics team over here. We have talent acquisition processes, and we help them essentially to make better hiring decisions using data and behavioral science. Do you know if there's any time where I might be able to speak to her for like 10 or 15 minutes in between one of those meetings?
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know. I can't schedule a call like right in between those because a lot of times those meetings, they run over. I don't know.
All right, John, let's stop it here. And I know it's a little bit faint, everyone. I've maxed out my computer. I don't know why sometimes go to webinar interacts in a weird way where it gets louder than this before when we were playing them in advance. So just lean into your computer here, turn up your speakers as much as you can. So we're hearing kind of a classic example where Jesse is calling in to an executive assistant. The executive is very busy. The executive's not there. She's not going to transfer the call through. And they're kind of going back and forth on what the best next step is for, in this case, the salesperson, Jesse. So, John, what are you hearing?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So the first thing I hear, and this is a major kudos to Jesse, and you're going to see why in just a couple of about 30 seconds or so here, for keeping the call alive, right? I would be willing to bet probably 90% of the sales reps that I've coached and worked with over the 18 years I've been doing this would have given up and just left the voicemail, right? You get to Sheila, she's not, or get to Janine, Sheila's not available, she's busy back to back all the time. Do you want to leave her a voicemail? Okay, I'll leave her a voicemail. And Jesse didn't do that, right? He agreed to leave the voicemail, but then continued to push back on availability. And okay, well, does she have any windows between those meetings, right? There's got to be time when she's not running from meeting to meeting, right? At some point, she's got to eat or, or breathe or use the restroom or something. So, so Jesse, from your perspective, I mean, we know the call goes on a little bit here, but without knowing what you know now about how the call's going to turn out, what is your goal here at this point in the call, knowing that we're not going to be able to get through to Sheila? What are you thinking right
now? Well, I remember back that actually Sheila was, I believe, VP or SVP of HR, right? So a little bit higher up, and there's people in the organization I would actually rather talk to. And so, I mean, really, I think her name is Janine. She's being very helpful already. Like, I just want to say that from the beginning, like, she did not make my job hard, right? Like, as soon as I asked her a question, she started telling me all about her schedule and, how she feels about it and stuff. So that was, I know I have a little bit to work with. So, I mean, my goal is to try and find out, who else in the organization it would make sense for me to talk to, essentially, and who those people are and how I can get in touch with them.
Yeah. Perfect, right? And that's where we're at this point. We know Sheila's pretty high up the organization. She's, Janine's made it very clear that this is going to be a difficult conversation to have, and so now we've got to go into Plan B, right? And start finding another way to get our way into this conversation, or somebody who can champion us into the conversation. Steve, go ahead and play it from here. Let's listen to this next little chunk. There's going to be a good stopping point coming up here.
So, have you left a voicemail before?
I think I have. I'm sure.
Okay. And if you just leave a callback number, or maybe it would be better if she could call you.
Okay.
All right.
Well, how about? Would you mind just giving her my callback number? It's 651-767-4054. Did you get that?
Yep, I did. And again, your name is
Jackie Inman.
Jesse Inman?
Yeah, from Infor. And yeah, I just love just a couple minutes if she has it at some point.
Okay, I will give her the message.
Thank you so much.
Do you think there's someone else that could help you? Do you think maybe the Vice President of HR?
So.
Yeah, why don't we pause there, John? Yeah. It's so telling. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly right. And this is kind of the turning point of the call here, right? You can see in my note that we got a little bit lucky that she offered this up, and this is a good lesson for all of us on the phone of why it's so important to keep these conversations going and how we can make sure that we get lucky on these calls a little bit more often, right? Because Jesse, like we talked about the first time we paused it, you've done a great job of keeping this call going. We're at about a 2.5 minute, 2 minute 17-second mark here on what should have just been a leave a voicemail and get out, right? So as we're thinking, and like Janine steps in and says, well, hey, wait a minute, do you think somebody else might be the right contact? Which is what you're thinking in your head anyway, right? So as you're listening to this call, is there something you could have done on that call proactively to give yourself a better chance of that happening more often versus counting on a helpful assistant?
Oh yeah, I mean, I definitely could have asked her, right? Like, and I think it's funny. I mean, like I said, she's very nice and she's handing me things. But really, you know, if someone that's just a little bit less giving, right? Like I could have just asked the question and hopefully found myself in the same situation that she puts me in, like voluntarily.
Yeah, and there was a great opportunity to do it because right before this, you did something that triggered her to give you this information, right? Which is you had a very quick, easy to digest nugget about why you were calling, right? It's, hey, I'm calling around predictive analytics and hiring and talent. And so you're hitting all these buzzwords for her that makes her think, well, maybe you're not barking up the right tree, right? And so at that point, we can tag the question right on to the end of that.
Yeah, and I mean, that also gets back to what you were saying earlier about the influence with, like, you just need to give a reason, right? Like, I don't need to get in and give her a value statement, right? Like, she just needs buzzwords and she needs to understand that I've got a reason for calling in the first place, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Bam, hang on, marketing guy's got something.
Yeah, so we've got a question on Twitter that's right along the same lines here. They're asking, when they call an operator and they're trying to figure out who the decision maker is that they're getting to, but the operator won't give them any information unless they tell them that decision maker's name. So what does he do?
I've got some friends at Zoom Info that'd be more than happy to solve that problem for you.
Right, exactly. So I'll give you one or two tips, and then Steve, feel free to jump in as well. But I mean, generally speaking, when we're calling into an organization, we have something, right? We at least have a name, even if it's not the right name. And so what I've found, and I think that there's a lot of research that backs this up, is people are much more likely to correct information you give them than to offer it up voluntarily, right? So if you know that the person's name is John Smith and the company is Infor, right? And I'm trying to get that person's email address so I can contact them directly, and she says I'm not allowed to give that information out. You can say, okay, well, I have john.smith@infor.com. Is that correct? They're much more likely to say, yes, that is, or no, and give you a correction versus just offering it up blindly. So I start to make some assumptions in there based on what information I do have. I'm a lot more likely that they're going to give me a correction that gives me the information that I actually wanted in the first place.
And John, we call that trading names at Vorsight, and it works incredibly well. So what we teach our folks to do is have a half dozen names ready to go and kind of an idea of an org chart mapped out. And then based on that, you can fill in the pieces that you don't know, the pieces parts you don't know, and they're much, much more likely. We've actually measured that one when we run A/B tests. When you don't know the name, you're much less likely to get it than if you know other names and you trade that information. So, hey, Kelly, why don't I get you to jump in here if you've dialed in but to a phone, seeing as you're doing sales effectiveness there. What are some of the other, you know, if you're calling like an HR, senior HR exec for your business, what are some of the other folks, some of the other functional areas, titles, roles that you would want to potentially go after?
Well, Jesse could probably answer that question a little bit better than I could. He knows his target personas. However, I think that just my general feedback on this call is really just changing your goal of the call. So you're not always trying to get through when you call into, you know, an assistant or a gatekeeper. You're just trying to the goal might be just gathering information, because you never know what other job titles or functions that person can put you in touch with. So instead of positioning it as I'm trying to get through, you know, I've tried to get through a number of times, maybe hoping you can help me out a little bit. Is there someone else that I might be able to speak with about X, Y, and Z?
And it's a completely different mindset going in when you're doing information gathering rather than going in to say, I'm going to get an appointment. Obviously, you're not going to get an appointment with an executive. So well said, Kelly. I appreciate the deflection on the question. That was very well done. Jesse, Jesse, so she's in salespeople. What do you want? So yeah, what are some of the other people that you'd love to hear the titles or roles come out about?
Yeah, I mean, so there's all sorts of people. I'd love to hear VP of HR, VP of HR operations, Director of Talent Acquisition, Director of Talent Acquisition Operations. I mean, VP and HR are interchangeable because there can be multiple levels. Director of Org Development, VP of Org Development, even learning and development people as well, just like everyone. And honestly, I can talk to operations and sales too, because I understand the value that our product gives, and you can pitch it to all sorts of people. So, I mean, there's all sorts of people that I'd love to talk to about talent science.
So call campers out there listening. The lesson here is know your org chart. Did you hear when I asked that simple question to Jesse? Bam, 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 bam. He knows. He knows what those org charts look like in the ideal client profile and the sorts of titles and responsibilities. And I'm shocked how frequently I'll talk to a salesperson and say, who do you want to talk to besides the CIO, CFO, CHRO? And they can't answer the question. It's you have to really understand the sub-functional areas within the primary functional area, and you've got to understand what that org chart looks like. And once you do that, then you can start to understand this whole 6 or 7 decision makers and how the politics of the organization works. So such an important lesson. So John, you want to keep going with this call?
Yeah. So one quick thing too to point out, and that I want to make sure everybody kind of catches on this, and why this kind of takes the turn that it does, is you have to keep in mind that executive admin or that assistant you're talking to, their only job is to protect their VIP, right? The head of whatever. They don't care about everybody else's schedule and getting you in front of them, right? So she's very willing to direct you to Karen, right, instead of getting to Sheila, because her job is to protect Sheila's calendar and Sheila's calls, not to protect Karen's, right? So keep that in mind as you start moving around the organization. They'll be more likely to give you more information because it doesn't affect their person anymore that they've been charged with protecting.
Well said.
We'll give her the message.
Thank you so much.
Do you think there's someone else that could help you? Do you think maybe the vice president of HR?
So that actually, yeah, that may be making a good point there. So really, whoever would be most responsible for talent acquisition. So Sheila might not be the right person. Is there someone that would more fall into their?
Well, she works with hiring and that type of thing also. So why don't I transfer you to Karen Buriski and see if she can help you at all, and if not, I have her let me know, and I'll give Sheila your number.
Okay, and Karen Buriski she's the VP of HR.
Right.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. That'd be great.
Let me transfer you.
Lovely hold music. John, any comments?
Yes. So the big comment here, Jesse, and we're going to hear it in these other calls as well, is make sure we're getting the information that we want while we have that person on the phone, right? This assistant's being very helpful to us right now. No reason not to get her direct dial number, her extension number, her email, something so we don't have to go through this entire dance every time that we want to reach her, right? She's more than willing to give us the information. It's just a real quick ask. Hey, before you transfer me over to her, can you provide me with her extension or her direct dial number? Let's make sure we capture all of that. You did a great job of getting her title, which is one of the key pieces. We've got her name, we've got her title. Let's go ahead and get those last couple of nuggets of information just so we can be more effective the next time we're reaching out.
Let's move on.
Yes, and again, to give Jesse full credit, what we didn't listen to those last 3 minutes of the call, Karen actually does pick up the phone. She is the right person to talk to and fully responsible to that. And they end up having another 3-minute conversation around that. So we ended up getting to the right person who ultimately is going to be the decision maker on that process. So nicely done, Jesse.
If you want to know something pretty cool, is we're actually in talks with this company at the moment.
Yeah, see, there you go. Look at that.
No kidding. So
that's not scheduled that any better.
Yeah. Hey, Jesse, just to clarify, that is an opportunity in the pipeline of Infor right now.
Absolutely.
Well, look, guys, everyone, I can't emphasize this enough. Like, with all due respect, Jesse, like, was that masterful, sales skills? No. Was that Jesse being absolutely fantastic at doing the grind work associated with the BDR job, with the sales job, of keeping that admin on the phone a little bit longer, of asking that extra question, and because of that, he's provided with a name that he wouldn't have got? Yeah. And that's the whole thing that I think some of us just lose sight of, is sometimes we overcomplicate all this stuff. What he did there is not, with all due respect, rocket science. What he did is excellent. And what he did led to an opportunity in the pipeline that most salespeople wouldn't get just because they don't do it. It's pretty binary. You either do it or you don't do it. And because Jesse did it, he gets an opportunity in the pipeline. Hope I didn't offend you, Jesse.
I'm a little upset, but I'll be okay.
Seriously, incredibly well done. Very well done. And we're looking forward to this one. You want to tee this one up, John?
Yeah, so this recording, this is going to be Paul. I'm not sure if Paul's on the call with us or not, but this is an initial reach out to somebody. Again, we're trying to connect with the initial decision maker or the decision maker that we have listed in the CRM that we're reaching out to.
Thank you for calling.
Wait while I transfer your call. Good morning. How can I help you?
Hi, I'm looking for Kyle Coon.
1 second.
And everyone, just quick comment there. There's that theme again. You know, I'm looking for Kyle Coon. And then when she says, 1 second, hold on, what's that extension number? How do you dial it directly? We'll have to hear him get those 10 digits, but let's move on.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Hello, Kyle. Hey, Kyle, this is Paul calling from N4. How's it going? Hey, you doing well? Hey, I was looking around on LinkedIn because I saw that you were the facilities project manager for, and I wanted to connect because we sent out some information to a few different people, but didn't hear anything back, and I'm thinking that we just didn't hit the right people. As a facilities project manager, you might have some interest in our asset management solution because we have a pretty much.
John, that's so interesting. Let's talk about that lead-in approach.
Yeah, absolutely. If I can jump back just for 1 second, because we've talked about it a couple of times, and the reason why we're so maniacal about getting that information, the reason it's going to be so helpful for you as a salesperson is not just that you can get there quicker, but now you can start calling before hours and after hours, before the switchboard and before admins start getting in and screening calls, and the calls go through a lot more often, and they're used to picking up the phone when you direct dial. So just want to make sure we understand kind of why that's so important. But yes, so Steve, as far as the lead-in approach there that Paul's taking on there, what's your thought? How effective do you think that is? What do you like about that approach?
Well, I just think it's interesting, just the way he's talking about, he leads in. I've just never heard anybody do this before. Hey, we're sending information to a variety of people. We're hearing nothing back. I think we're calling on the wrong people. I think I emailed the wrong people. Who's in charge of blank? I just think it's more interesting than anything else. I haven't actually tested it. I don't know if that's effective, if that works, but it's different. It's a lot different than anything I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's definitely different. And the thing I like about it that we talked about a little bit earlier is he's kind of changing the goal of the call, right? He's not saying, hey, I want to sell you this. I want to talk to you about that. It's, listen, I think we're sending this stuff to the wrong people. Can you help me out, right? And he's making an appeal to get some help. And what you're going to find as the call goes on is he is going to get some help, right? By just coming in and putting himself out there honestly that I think we're talking to the wrong people. I'm hoping you might be able to help me out and let me know if we're on the right track here. So I like the approach of appealing for some help. It sounds like he's made this call probably a handful of times to different people and sent out a dozen or so emails trying to get these people and had no luck. So at that point, no harm in taking a different approach there to see if you can catch something.
Yeah, we're going to put this tactic on the must-watch list because it's interesting. All right, let's play it.
Entire facilities cloud suite that helps manage facilities across the board, and it's also something that we use for everything from drones to reporting to basic automation and work order scheduling. Is there anything like that we can use right now? Well, we use Corrigo for all of our scheduling, work orders, all that kind of stuff. However, I'm kind of involved in what you're talking about. I'll run projects like building construction, design, that sort of thing. Now, when it comes to maintenance of our buildings, I have a counterpart here that is over all of our maintenance technicians and all that. So that may be more appropriate to what you're talking about. And let me say this, I know you get this line all the time, but I'm not lying. I literally do have an appointment here at 11 that I'm walking towards. I'll be glad to give you my email address. And if you shoot me an email, just your contact info, just, shoot this. I'll be glad to pick this up and help you however I can. I'll find it right up and give you that.
Is it going to be kyle.kuhn@.com?
No, sir.
All right, so let's talk about this. So John.
Yeah, absolutely. So we lost that in his desire to help us. We kind of got sidetracked from where the opportunity was, which is he mentioned he's kind of involved from a design standpoint, but the person who's really responsible for all of the maintenance technicians is one of his counterparts. We don't know that person's name. We don't know their title. We have no idea how to reach. Even if we just get the name real quickly, we can now go back to the operator, back to the switchboard, use some of our additional tools to figure out what we can about that contact and start going down that path as well, right? We don't want to be completely at the mercy of this gentleman to honor his word to help us out and make this connection via email. He may, right? He told us he wasn't lying, which is nice, but we don't know what's actually going to happen there. And so even if it's just a real quick, hey, you mentioned a counterpart that handles the maintenance side. What was that person's name? Great. And then keep going back, see if we can get that full information. Because while we want to be respectful of his time, this call goes on for another 50 minutes while we're haggling out how this conversation is going to go. It would have taken us 15 seconds to get the right person's contact information or the more appropriate contact information. That would have then taken it off of this guy's plate, and now he's not playing email delivery guy. He can connect us to the right person, and now we have a warm transfer, a warm lead into the more appropriate contact who's responsible for building maintenance.
It's a simple lesson. It's just a lesson you just hear repeated over and over. I tell you, I in many cases hear scheduled expected sales calls that happen later in the sales funnel. And those scheduled calls, people will say, well, besides me, there are 5 other people involved in the decision. And then the sales rep never says, okay, who are those people? And what you can say is, who are those people? I won't email them directly. I won't get in touch with them directly without your consent. It's good for me to know who they are so I can do some research and homework. Again, here we go, because I'd like to do some research and homework. It's just such a simple thing to say, and then you can build out your opportunity contact roles in your CRM. Kelly, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think that this guy was willing to give the information as well, and something that I learned from you, Steve, back in the day, and something that I also learned from John recently in our training with Factor 8 was that this guy hasn't tapped out on questions yet. Keep asking questions until someone stops giving you the information that you need.
That's it. Just be curious, and it pays off massive dividends. All right. So call number 3 here, John.
Yep. There we go. So this is Adam. This is going to be a little bit of a different approach. We're starting off in the phone tree, so we'll get a little bit of an opportunity to hear how this goes.
Boy, everyone, get ready for it. This is going to, if you've ever done sales, inside sales for any period of time, this will be very, very familiar to you. Watch the comments pop up as it goes.
Thank you for calling. If you know your party's extension, you may dial it at this time. For an employee directory, dial 0. For customer service, spell the first and last name, then press pound. Port. No matching name. Try a different spelling.
Trial and error, baby.
No matching name. Try a different spelling. No matching name. Try a different spelling. No matching names. Try a different spelling. Thank you for calling. If you know your party's extension, you may dial it at this time or dial 1 for...
John, I'm sure that's never happened to you before.
No, never happened to me. Never been through that dance before. And Steve, your comment that popped up was exactly right, which is less is more when you're dealing with phone trees, right? So put in fewer letters, or try a different approach. Obviously, this isn't working. The odds of you misspelling it 4 times are pretty slim, and you don't know how to get to the right person. So either shrink it down and provide less information and cast a wider net, or try a different name altogether, or tap out to the operator, before you get there. The other thing that we'll hear as he's going through it is, this is why it's so important to capture that direct contact information, because you don't want to have to go through this minute of brutality every time you're trying to reach out to this contact, because even as he gets into the right person here, or gets connected through the operator, he still doesn't have any better information to connect with that person next time. No direct line, doesn't even get the spelling of the last name corrected so that they can find them in the directory the next time. So again, make your life easier instead of making your life harder. Because it's hard enough to get in touch with these folks and sell effectively without putting landmines in front of yourself.
I'll give you some fun research from the Vorsight lab from back in the day. We did its experiment. This was a long time ago now. I think it was like 2012, very, very many years ago, where we had pure lists of direct lines and then pure lists of switchboard operators. If you call pure lists of direct lines, it took on average 5.5 minutes to get a prospect on the phone. That's a director VPC level. If you called through the pure list of switchboard numbers, it took a little over 22 minutes to get a director VP or C level on the phone. So do you make a time investment up front to get a direct phone number? Yes, or you have to actually buy it from like a Discover Org or a Zoom Info. But once you have it, now you have it forever, and you can continue to have that time saving. So it's a massive, massive time savings. Other tip is first name. Sometimes these things are set up in such a way, I don't know why, these phone systems where even though it says last name, if you try the first name, it actually works. It's probably whatever IT guy set it up, just got it backwards. Marketing guy, what do you got?
Yeah, so we have actually several questions on this. Once you get that direct line, there's 2 things. What's best practice for calling them? Daily, bi-weekly, weekly? And then the second question is, at what point is it legally spam to be calling them so much?
I don't know the answer to question number 2. So John, I think we're going to punt on that. We're not lawyers, guys. I don't know about that opt-in phone rules depending on the country, but go ahead and take the first part.
Yeah, so what I would advise you on that, I mean, there's hundreds of tools and research on the right cadence and the appropriate cadence and voicemails and emails and all that sort of thing. So without advocating for a particular position there, the most important thing I will tell you is, don't let that be your only means of contact, right? Because your job, as Steve mentioned, right, you're trying to put this puzzle together. Go out cast a wide net and find out as much information as you can to make sure that A, you're reaching out to the right contact for what you're trying to do, and B, that this is a customer you should even be chasing. Because there's nothing more frustrating than spending 3 or 4 weeks and 20 or 30 calls and 15 emails. You finally get that person on the phone and realize, A, they're not the right person to talk to, B, they don't do that job anymore, or C, this company isn't somebody who's a good fit for you. They're not qualified to work with your organization, right? If this thing's going to blow up, your job as the salesperson is to proactively blow it up as fast as possible, because the best answer is a yes, and the second best answer is a fast no, and that's where you want to focus your effort. Is don't just keep pounding the same rock hoping something's going to come out. Go around it, try different people, get to different areas just to figure out, is this even a lead worth pursuing before I put all that effort into it?
And even if they're voicemail, you keep leaving voicemails and the emails are not bouncing back, go back to the receptionist again and confirm the spelling of a name, because a lot of times these people leave the company and they don't deprovision the email and the voicemail. So you're leaving voicemails and emails for a ghost, for someone who doesn't listen to them. Probably some IT person listens to them, and they're not going to certainly call you back, of course. Good. Let's play a little bit more, and then we'll do some more Q&A and wrap.
For customer service, to place an order or check the status. Dial 2 for Welch product information. Dial 3 for warranty service repair. Dial 4 for spells, or you may dial 0 for an operator. Thank you. Wait while I transfer your call. Good morning, thank you for calling. How can I help you?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I've been trying to get in touch with Dan's sister. Does he still work at?
He does. He's just, I know that he's super busy. Hold on one second. Did you already leave a voicemail?
for him?
No, I couldn't. His last name wouldn't show up in the employee directory. I don't know if I was spelling it right or not.
Oh, okay. Let me transfer you over to the extension I have for him. Okay. Hold on 1 second for me.
All right, thank you.
And there's that theme again, right, John?
There it is. He even mentioned, I mean, that's a perfect opportunity. I couldn't find him in the directory. I'm not sure if I'm spelling his name right. Could you confirm the spelling of his last name for me? Okay, great. What is the extension you have on file for him so I don't have to bother you the next time, right? It's just, and Steve, you mentioned it perfectly when we were talking to Jesse's call earlier, right? It's not this magical sales skill that you need to have. It's doing the basic blocking and tackling 50, 60, 70 times a day that makes you a really good salesperson, right? And that's the magic, especially in an inside sales organization. It's committing to, and the discipline to follow that process and use these best practices, call in, call out 60, 70 times a day, 5 days a week, and get the multiplier effect out of there. That's where the magic tends to happen.
It always comes back to consistency, always. Kelly, any comments?
I completely agree with John. An opportunity to grab the extension there that was missed. That's a huge miss because, yeah, then you're just going to have to go back and start from the beginning.
There it is. John, anything else to play in this call? Otherwise, we'll go to a final Q&A and wrap.
I'd go to Q&A and wrap. That was the bulk of the call.
Let's do it. All right. So, marketing guy, help me. And I don't think we even really need to debrief this, John. I think we've got this down pretty darn well. Point. So, hey, how do I do this? Presenter view. How do I do this? I'll figure this out. No, that wasn't it. So, all right, that's what I was trying to get at. Okay, cool. So, marketing guy, what do we got?
Yeah, so we got a few questions on Twitter right now. First off, John, great session. This is from Derek. He's asking, have we found a clever way to engage someone further after they say not interested? Is there a value prop or another scientific discovery like because that was shared earlier in the call camp?
Yeah, great question. And I think, and Steve, you would be better equipped to speak to the research side of things if there are things that you've tested. I think part of it depends on when that's coming up, right? Because I classify them differently. If it comes up right after you introduce yourself, that's really just a dismissal. It's not an objection, and you handle it a little bit differently versus if we've had a little bit of a conversation, we've put an offer on the table and now they tell us they're not interested. Now this is an objection that we need to handle with a different process, right? So if it's somebody that's dismissing it straight out of hand, I'm going to try and go back and push back a little bit further, right? Maybe it's a rephrase, maybe it's going back with a secondary pitch or a secondary offer, something along those lines, and see if I can get them to bite on it if they're just going into dismissal mode and trying to punt off the call. The other thing I might do is, again, start digging around and see if there's an alternate contact in there, and maybe I'm not dealing with the right person, or if they're clear on what it is we're trying to talk about, similar to what Jesse did on his call earlier, right? You give them that little 15-second, well, here's the type of people I'm trying to talk to about this sort of thing, and see if they can point you in the direction of somebody else who'd be a better fit.
Yeah, write down this phrase. I'd imagine that you blank. So you could say, I'd imagine that you are not currently overseeing the such and such process, or I'd imagine that you're not responsible for blank, or I'd imagine that you already have a vendor you're happy with, or I'd imagine that you're very busy. You can make up an objection for the not interested, make up any objection you want, and then overcome the objection that you've made up. Usually people will be so impressed by your snake charming skills that they will then come back and say, well, actually the real reason is blank, because not interested is just bogus. It doesn't mean anything at all. And most of the time, I'm not listening. John, just speak for one moment here, one last 30 seconds, and don't take yes for an answer, because I think that's so compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that Kelly alluded to just a second ago in her comment, right? Is when somebody's willing to give you information, don't take the transfer to the voicemail or the one nugget of information that you got. Continue to ask questions until they literally tell you, I have to get off the phone now, right? I mean, there's a ton of information. Don't be the one who shorts the call out. And there's a couple of examples here of other information that you can be asking for, pushing for additional contacts. I can tell you just as a quick story, right? When you focus on this, you'll be amazed with the results because with one of the groups that Kelly is responsible for in that group, during like a 40-minute session on the phones when we were focused and specifically tasked with getting extra contacts, a group of about 14 reps found 89 new contacts in their existing account base, right? So these were accounts they were already responsible for working with. So it's amazing what'll happen if you actually put some focus on it.
It's such a big deal. It's really, really, really good. So what we've learned, everyone, if we haven't beaten this to death, here it is. Get more contacts, leverage the switchboard operators, the admins, the IT help desk, the random dials. Get past that first. Yes, so many different things that you can try. Again, this is a game of trial and error. Marketing guy, any last questions or comments in there?
We've got one last question. What's a pleasant way to get past the gatekeeper and ask for an extension?
John, pleasant way to get past the gatekeeper and ask for an extension.
Pleasant way. Well, part of it you can't control, right? You can't control what their response is and how they're going to handle it. But generally speaking, what I found is, one, use their name, right? If they answer with their name, make sure you acknowledge them by name. Two, if you ask for help, they will be more likely to give you help or give you a different response, right? And then the third thing I do, which I think I referenced a little earlier, is once they put you through, I bounce back out and get back to that gatekeeper again and thank her again by name or him again by name for putting me through and see if I can dig up some additional information. Again, some of them, if they're dealing with 500 or 600 calls a day that they're routing, they're not interested in your pleasantness, and there's really not much you're going to do to change that around. But for the vast majority of people, those couple, three things will actually make a big difference in the way they respond.
And call them at lunch. If someone's nasty to you at lunch, they have to go take lunch. Someone who's nice might be there and help you out. Write down these things. Please, thank you. All right, so please, thank you. Can you help me real quick, or a quick question for you? All those things will work well. It's just simple, good old fashioned, do unto others as you will have them do unto you, and ask questions confidently and coolly like you're supposed to have them, trade on that information, and you'll be fine. Great. So John, huge round of applause for you. Excellent lesson, very well taught. Thank you so much. And I really want to emphasize Jesse, and who are the other reps there, Kelly, who we had their calls from?
You know, I'm not actually too sure. Paul was one of them?
It was Paul and Adam.
Okay.
So hey, Paul, Adam out there listening in TV land, thank you. Seriously, thank you. And Jesse, you're the man for letting us put this up. That was great. The name of the game, everyone, is consistency. So next time on Call Camp, guess what you're going to get? Another dose of Factor 8. They were so good, they had so much content, we had to put it in 2 call camps. So we got Lauren Bailey joining us for Call Camp on May 30th. Is that where we're at? May 30th. So be there or be square. Everyone have a great selling day and gather contacts. Put them in your CRM. Take care.
Cool. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.